Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now, today I want to talk about Jasmy because we're seeing something really interesting developing on the Jasmy chart. And what this is essentially Jasmy looks like it's about to break a major structure that it's been forming for the majority of this year at this point. And this is important because this isn't necessarily like it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. All we know is that its structure is about to break just because it's kind of at the end of a wedge. And so we're going to go into that, take a look at that, discuss, could it go up? Could it go down? If it goes up, what do we think it'll do? If it goes down, what do we think it'll do? All that type of stuff. So anyway, let's go on ahead and dive right in. So starting out, before we get into Jasmy specifically, I want to do kind of just an overall update on the market. What we can see is that the overall market is in fact down. So Jasmy is also down. It's actually blocked by my picture, but it's right here. We can see it's down 1.4% on the day. Not too bad overall. The week it's kind of about even, not really down a whole lot. Months down a little bit, but then obviously still up pretty nicely on the course of the year. So I guess with respect to like how the current market is moving today, Jasmy doing relatively decent. We got Tau, FET, Sui, Brett, IMX, Pendle, Near, like a lot of pretty big projects we can see. A lot of decently sized names, all basically going down kind of throughout. We see Bitcoin Cash, TIA, and then Radium is also blocked by my picture, but those are kind of the only ones that are up almost at all. We have Solana up about 0.5% today too, which is good. Solana does continue to outperform the market just more generally, so that's also good to see, particularly for us Solana fans. So now going into the Jasmy chart, what I want to take a look at is the structure that we're about to break, because what we can see is basically ever since like the beginning of February, or I guess the end of February, I should say, we've been able to hold this support really well, kind of at like this 0.17 range, right? And so what we can see is with the current price, we are basically right on this level of support right now. We basically shot up, had a little bit of resistance at this point, moved right through, came back, bounced up, bounced here again, bounced here again, and then now we might be bouncing here again, potentially. It's really hard to say, but we can see that sooner or later, right? I mean, we wait until even the beginning of December, like there's going to be nowhere else for it to go, whether it kind of breaks out and does nothing, whether it breaks out and goes up, breaks out, goes down. It really, it's almost impossible to say for sure. What I can say is that we have seen kind of decreasing interest overall within like the Jasmy ecosystem here lately. People haven't kind of seen as much interest in the Jasmy ecosystem. There's not been as much news. There hasn't been as much like volume. There hasn't been as much price act, like, right? There's like, it's just everything for Jasmy has been kind of just less recently. Not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, what comes next may potentially change that, but overall, like, we've already seen a pretty nice run up this year. So seeing this level of consolidation, particularly if we can hold this level of support here, honestly, like in the long term, I think this looks pretty good, because what we do know is we're not necessarily in Bitcoin season yet, or in altcoin season, excuse me. What we can see is we actually have dropped back down into Bitcoin season. If we look at like kind of the month over month so far, I mean, we're at 8. So like the worst we've seen as far as like being really heavily weighted toward Bitcoin. And we can even see, if we look back to crypto bubbles, we are green on the month, but we can see like, a decent bit of like larger projects pulling back a pretty strong amount. So, I mean, there's been a lot of chop and a lot of like mixed kind of signals going on in the market right now. And so seeing that, we are in Bitcoin season and that Jasmy has not done particularly well, I think is fine, right? Like I really, to me, what I'm looking at right now is can we hold this level of support? Because this has been a major level of support. And if we look, like, if we don't hold this level of support, I mean, best case scenario, we're probably going back to 0.007. Worst case, we might even be looking like 0.004. And so obviously, like, not great outcomes on either of those if we do break through this support. And so I really am kind of going to be looking to see what happens here, because if we break through, I think that could be not the best of news. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Overall, the Jasmy chart's looking, as I've said, like it's fine. Not a whole lot of news, not a whole lot of stuff to move off of. And so given all of that, like, I think this is kind of a symptom of people just kind of getting bored and going away. So anyway, but if you are interested and do want to trade, I have partnered with BTCC for this month. They've actually been like a pretty interesting exchange. I've been able to kind of check it out a little bit. I haven't done too much trading on it yet just because I have been using Margex kind of already. But it's got a lot of really interesting features to it. They've got a lot more trading pairs. I think they've got over 300. They do leverage trading up to 500x. I usually don't really do anything more than 100s. But if you do like to do some of these like super ridiculous, like high leverage, like I would say not even high leverage, like extreme leverage, like micro trades that can pay out, insane amounts if you can like really understand like the short-term scalping, like great way to do that. One thing that they also have done that I actually think is really, really cool is they've done tokenized stocks. So if you want to buy like US equities and maybe you're not a US citizen, like this is a really interesting way to do that. Honestly, I think this is the future, and I think a lot of people kind of already know, particularly like on Wall Street. BlackRock has long been a supporter of tokenizing assets and tokenizing stocks and equities and all this type of stuff. And so the fact that we're starting to see this already, I think is really super cool. So if you do want to trade tokenized stocks, you can do that as well. The other thing that is cool is you can actually leverage trade tokenized stocks, which I think is kind of funny, kind of an interesting mix between crypto and the world of equities kind of combining. So anyway, if this is something that you're interested in, feel free to check out the description, the link below. It seems to be a pretty great site, and like I've been overall like pretty comfortable using it so far. There hasn't really been a whole lot of like new like features or like nuances to how to like use it. So like I said, if you are interested, please feel free to just check out the link in the description and you'll be able to find it there. So anyway, moving on, the next thing I want to take a look at is what we're seeing on Twitter. Part of kind of what I've said recently is, there's just not a whole lot going on with Jasmy, right? And I think one of the easier ways to see this is looking through the X feed, right? You can see here we've got a Jasmy bear scenario. So, this person's going over kind of how this would look if we were to see a bit of a pullback. It looks like they're calling for maybe a support at I think they've got an extra 0 here. We can see it like 0.01 is kind of what they're showing. We can see a lot of others. This person's tracking Jasmy compared to Cardano back in 2021. So, we could potentially maybe see a similar move to what Cardano did. And I think that's kind of what they're insinuating here. This is a structure that I think is showing something somewhat similar to what I was showing is, they're essentially predicting a bounce off this level of support, which I do think is possible. But ultimately what we can see is like the majority of what's going on here is literally just looking at charts and price prediction, just because there's not really much more news to go off of. We start to see some of these other like more like project specific related things, but a lot of what we're seeing is just purely kind of around the chart, just because there hasn't been a lot of news. And as I've mentioned several times before on the channel, like just because there isn't news doesn't mean that the project's dead. It doesn't mean that nothing's happening. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are, hard at work making Jasmy happen, right? We just don't see it. It's kind of behind the curtain at this point. So, ultimately, like, that's not a huge concern to me if we continue to go long periods of time without much public interaction. I do think from like a marketing perspective, the lack of like public interaction is not a good thing, just because so much of crypto is based on kind of the public perception and marketing and things like that. So I definitely don't think it's a good thing. But I also don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it and kind of how I'm seeing things right now. The last thing I want to check out before we end the video here is just kind of how the liquidation map is looking. I do kind of try and track this just because I think it's been very, very useful in the past. And so I think it's always a good idea just to keep an eye on it. I also have traded kind of almost exclusively off of what this says in the past, and it's worked pretty well, I would say, to a degree. And so what we can see is on the Bitcoin liquidation map, on the 1 day, we're pretty much balanced. The other thing that's important to note here is only about $1 billion to liquidate. Not a whole lot, honestly. Like the volume here seems relatively low, or I guess lower than what we've seen recently. And then also if we look at the 7 day, we're also looking pretty evened out. I don't know if you guys remember from a couple videos back, but we could see that like it used to be that we were very, very biased towards liquidating longs, which would indicate a move to the downside. We have seen that move to the downside on Bitcoin. And so now I think we're kind of getting to the point where we're more balanced, at least from the 1 and 7 day. However, if we do look at the 30 day, there is still a little bit of a bias. Well, I guess maybe more than a little bit. It's about 2 to 1 of a bias that we kind of continue on the way down. With election day in the US getting close, I could see maybe we see kind of sort of a fake out to the downside, or potentially even a fake out to the upside as well, right? But I think we're going to start to see kind of a quick move one way and then kind of a jump to the other, just because that's going to kind of freak the most people out and probably draw the most amount of liquidations. And so that's kind of what I'm expecting to see coming up over the next week, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. It's hard to say for sure right now. There's a lot of uncertainty going on right now, like with a lot of different like sectors or like parts of the world, right? China's looking a little bit precarious from an economic situation. There's obviously the issues unfolding in the Middle East. We've got the US election. There's a general sense of like crypto regulatory like opacity within the US. There's a lot of things like this that are going on, and these are all like pretty complex things to like calculate into like how you're going to like play your Bitcoin play, right? And so anyway, that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. Overall, if you're not like a fairly advanced trader, I would say maybe not the best time to be dipping your toes in, just because honestly right now it kind of feels more like gambling than anything else. I think there is kind of like a longer term bias on the market, and so if you are like obviously not like looking to leverage trade or anything, but you're just looking to like dollar cost average or buy and hold, I mean, you know, now it kind of seems as good a time as any. But if you are looking to do more like short term trading and kind of learning how to like kind of do that on a more consistent basis within the market, you know, maybe wait a little while until we've got a more clear direction on the market more generally. And there's fewer like very impactful like kind of variables in play. So that, you know, obviously nothing that I say is financial advice. This is just kind of my opinion and kind of how I'm viewing the market right now. Obviously, if you disagree, then you know, you can act accordingly. But that's just kind of my opinion and how I'm seeing things right now. So hopefully the information in this video was useful. If it was, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really does help me out. It also helps me, you know, continue to grow the channel and continue to bring more hopefully valuable information to you guys. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of them. So if you have anything you want me to see or anything like that, the comment section would be a great place to do so. Also, again, you know, if you are looking for an exchange, I do have both my BTCC as well as Margex links in the description if that is something that you're wanting to kind of start to try out. One thing I did not mention, or at least I forgot to mention with BTCC, is they do have a paper trading account. So if this is something where you're just trying to kind of dip your toes in and kind of learn more than anything else, BTCC does have that paper trading capability, which is nice. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.